The night my husband's family threw me out of their Christmas dinner, I thought my marriage was over. I was standing on their front porch in the freezing cold, holding my coat in one hand and my purse in the other. Behind the closed door, I could still hear Christmas music playing. My husband, Daniel, was inside. He had watched his mother accuse me of stealing from the family and had said nothing. I kept staring at the door, waiting for him to come after me. He didn't. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Finally, I walked to my car. I was crying so hard that I could barely see the road. What they didn't know was that I hadn't stolen anything. In fact, I had spent the previous 6 months secretly protecting the family from someone who had been stealing thousands of dollars from them every month. I had kept quiet because I promised Daniel's father, Robert, that I would. But as I drove away that night, I made one decision. I was done protecting people who were willing to destroy me. And the next morning, I was going to tell the truth. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I had been married to Daniel for 8 years. When we first met, I loved how close his family was. They had Sunday dinners together, celebrated every birthday, and spent every Christmas in the same large house outside Boston. His parents, Robert and Linda, had built a successful landscaping company from nothing. Daniel worked for the company with his younger brother, James. I never cared about their money. I had my own career as an office manager, and Daniel and I lived in a modest house 20 minutes away. For years, I thought I had a good relationship with everyone. Linda could be difficult, but I tried to respect her. James was competitive, but I ignored him. Robert was quiet and usually kind to me. Then, about a year before that Christmas, Robert called me unexpectedly. He asked if we could meet for coffee without telling anyone. I thought something terrible had happened. When I arrived, he looked exhausted. He placed a folder on the table and said, "Sarah, I need your help." I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements from the family business. Several payments had been made to a company I didn't recognize. I asked Robert what the company was. He shook his head. "That's the problem. I don't know. The payments had started small. $500 here. $800 there. Then they became larger. 10,000. 15,000. Sometimes twice in the same month." Robert had initially assumed it was an accounting mistake. But when he asked the bookkeeper, she said the payments had been authorized by someone with access to the company's financial accounts. Robert had investigated quietly. The strange company was registered under a name that looked completely legitimate. But when he searched deeper, he discovered that the mailing address belonged to a private mailbox. There was no office, no employees, no real business. "I think someone in my family is doing this," he said. I stared at him. "Who?" Robert looked at me for several seconds. "I don't know yet." Then he pushed another document toward me. It was a list of people who had access to the company's accounts. Daniel was on it. James was on it. Linda was on it. And one other person was listed. Robert himself. I immediately told Robert he should go to the police. He shook his head. "Not yet." He explained that if he accused the wrong person, he could destroy the company and his family at the same time. He wanted proof first. Then he asked me to help him review the financial records because I was good with details and, most importantly, nobody would suspect me. I agreed. For 6 months, Robert and I quietly tracked every suspicious payment. We discovered that the money was being transferred through several accounts before reaching the fake company. Whoever was doing it understood the system. They knew exactly how to hide the transfers. They also knew when Robert was traveling and when the company accountant was on vacation. I began to suspect James because he had the most knowledge about the company's finances. But then we found something strange. Several transfers had been authorized from Daniel's office computer. I felt sick when I saw the evidence. I asked Robert if he believed Daniel was stealing. He shook his head. "I don't know." That answer hurt more than I expected. I went home that night and looked at my husband differently. Daniel was sitting on the couch watching television. He smiled when I walked in. "How was your day?" he asked. I almost told him everything. Instead, I said, "Fine." I hated lying to him, but I didn't know whether he was involved. Over the next few weeks, Robert and I continued investigating. Then we discovered something that changed everything. The computer records showed that Daniel's office had been used to authorize payments late at night. But Daniel wasn't always there. Sometimes he was out of town. Sometimes he was home with me. Someone else had access to his computer. We needed more evidence. Robert installed additional security on the financial system. Within 2 weeks, another transfer was attempted. This time, the system captured the device being used. It wasn't Daniel's computer. It wasn't James's either. It was Linda's personal laptop. Robert stared at the report for a long time. Then he whispered, "I never wanted it to be her." I felt my stomach drop. Linda was his wife, Daniel's mother, and the woman who had always treated me like I was trying to take her son away. Robert didn't confront Linda immediately. Instead, he wanted to know why she was doing it. We discovered that Linda had secretly borrowed money from several people to finance a failed investment. She had lost almost $90,000. Rather than tell Robert, she had started moving money from the company to cover the debt. At first, she intended to repay it, but the losses continued. Soon she was taking more money just to replace what she had already taken. It became a cycle. Robert was devastated. He didn't want to believe his wife had done it. But the evidence was overwhelming. He told me he planned to confront her after Christmas because he wanted the family together before everything exploded. I asked him why he was waiting. He said, "Because once I accuse her, there is no going back." I understood. What I didn't know is that Linda had somehow discovered that Robert was investigating. And she was about to create a story that would make me the perfect person to blame. 2 days before Christmas, Linda called me. She sounded unusually friendly. "Sarah, I need you to do me a favor." She asked me to come to the house early on Christmas Eve and help prepare dinner. I agreed. When I arrived, she was standing in the kitchen with several documents spread across the counter. "Can you organize these?" she asked. I recognized the documents immediately. They were financial statements from the company. My heart started pounding. Linda watched my face carefully. "What's wrong?" she asked. I told her nothing. She smiled. "You're good with numbers. Maybe you can help me understand where all this money is going." I knew exactly what she was doing. She was testing whether I knew about the investigation. I pretended not to understand. "I don't know anything about the company finances." She stared at me for several seconds. Then she smiled. "Of course you don't." I left that afternoon and called Robert. He told me to stay calm. "She's scared," he said. "And scared people make mistakes." He was right. Christmas Day arrived. Everyone gathered at the house. The dining room was decorated beautifully. Candles burned on the table. Christmas music played softly in the background. For a few hours, everything seemed normal. Then Linda stood up after dinner. She held a folder in her hands. "There is something we need to discuss." My heart dropped. Daniel looked at his mother. "What is it?" Linda looked directly at me. "Sarah has been stealing from the company." The room went silent. Daniel stared at me. "What?" I stood up. "That's not true." Linda opened the folder and spread documents across the table. Several pages showed transfers from company accounts. She pointed to my name. It appeared on one of the authorization forms. I couldn't believe it. "That's forged," I said. Linda shook her head. "You had access to Daniel's computer. You knew the company accounts. You were the only person who had a reason to hide these transfers." I looked at Daniel. "Tell her she's lying." He didn't speak. That silence broke my heart. Linda continued. "I knew she was doing something strange. She asked too many questions about the company." James nodded. "I noticed that too." Suddenly everyone was talking. They accused me of manipulating Daniel. They said I had planned to steal money and leave. I tried to explain, but nobody listened. Then Linda said the words I will never forget. "You are not family. You never were." I looked at Daniel. "Please." He stood there, frozen. I asked him one last time. "Do you believe them?" He couldn't answer. Linda pointed toward the door. "Leave." I looked at Robert. He was sitting silently at the end of the table. For one horrible second, I thought he had betrayed me too. Then I remembered our agreement. He was waiting. He was watching. But I couldn't stay. I grabbed my coat. Daniel finally whispered, "Sarah." I looked at him. "You had one chance to defend me." Then I walked out. The door closed behind me. And that was the moment I decided I would never protect this family again. The next morning, I woke up at 6. I had barely slept. My phone was full of missed calls from Daniel. I ignored them. Then there was a knock at my door. It was Robert. He looked exhausted. He walked inside and placed a large box on my table. "I'm sorry," he said. I stared at him. "You let them throw me out." He nodded. "I know." Then he opened the box. Inside were copies of every financial record we had collected. "Linda forged your name." I looked at him. "I know." He pulled out another document. "And I have proof." The document showed the real source of the transfers. Every payment had eventually gone into an account controlled by Linda. Robert had also recorded a conversation with her the night before. She admitted creating the false documents because she knew Robert was preparing to expose her. I sat down. Robert looked at me. "I should have stopped her before Christmas." I shook my head. "Why didn't you?" He answered quietly, "Because I was still trying to save my marriage." I understood then. He hadn't betrayed me. He had simply waited too long. Robert gave me everything. The recordings, the bank statements, the computer records, the forensic report showing the signatures had been copied. Then he said something unexpected. "Daniel knows the truth now." I looked away. "It doesn't matter." Robert shook his head. "It matters to him." It should have mattered when I was standing at that door. Robert had no answer. Later that morning, Daniel arrived. He looked like he hadn't slept either. He stood outside my door. "Can I come in?" I let him enter. He immediately started crying. I was wrong. I said nothing. "Mom showed me the documents last night." He told me that after I left, Robert confronted Linda. She broke down and admitted everything. She had created the fake documents and used my name because she needed someone else to blame. Daniel looked at me. "I should have believed you." I nodded. "Yes." He wiped his face. "I'm sorry." I asked him one question. "Why didn't you defend me?" He looked at the floor. "Because I was afraid of my mother." I answered, "And I was afraid of losing my husband." Then I told him something he didn't expect. "But you chose your fear." Daniel asked me to come home. I refused. He said he would do anything to fix our marriage. I told him I didn't know whether it could be fixed. For the first time, I wasn't interested in making everyone comfortable. I needed to think about myself. The investigation moved quickly. Linda was forced to admit that she had taken more than $160,000 from the company. She had also falsified several documents and attempted to frame me. Robert filed the necessary legal complaints. The family business survived, but everything changed. James apologized to me. He admitted he had believed Linda because he didn't want to believe she could do something like that. I accepted his apology, but I kept my distance. Daniel started therapy. He also moved out of the family home. He rented a small apartment near my house, but I told him not to pressure me. For several months, we lived separately. During that time, I realized something important. I had spent years trying to become the kind of wife his family would accept. I had forgotten that my marriage was supposed to be about two people, not an entire family. 6 months later, Daniel asked me to meet him for coffee. He looked different. Calmer. More confident. He told me he had stopped working directly under his parents. He had started a new position with another company. He had paid off his personal debts. Most importantly, he had learned to say no to his mother. I listened quietly. Then he said, "I don't expect you to forgive me." I looked at him. "Good." He smiled sadly. "I just want you to know that I understand what I did." I asked him what he understood. He said, "I didn't betray you because I believed you were guilty. I betrayed you because I was afraid of my family." That answer mattered. It didn't erase what happened, but it showed me that he finally understood the real problem. We didn't get back together immediately. We spent another year rebuilding trust. There were difficult conversations. There were arguments. There were days when I wanted to walk away. But slowly, Daniel changed. He stopped asking me to forgive quickly. He stopped defending his family's behavior. He finally understood that protecting your marriage sometimes means disappointing your parents. A year after the Christmas incident, Robert invited me to dinner. I almost refused. But I agreed. The house felt different. Linda was gone. She had moved to another state while the legal case continued. The dining room was quieter. Robert looked older. He apologized to me. I should have protected you that night. I told him I understood why he had hesitated. He shook his head. Understanding doesn't make it right. I appreciated that. James also apologized. Then Robert gave me a small envelope. Inside was a check. I immediately pushed it back. I can't take this. He smiled. It's not for you. I looked confused. He explained that he had created a fund in my name to support women who had been falsely accused or financially manipulated by their families. I stared at him. Why me? He answered, because you were the person who stayed honest when everyone else was trying to protect themselves. I accepted the responsibility, not the money. The fund eventually helped dozens of women. And every time I signed a grant, I remembered that terrible Christmas night. Daniel and I eventually renewed our vows. It was simple. No giant ceremony. No expensive decorations. Just a few friends and the people who had earned their place in our lives. Robert was there. James was there. Linda wasn't. She had accepted a plea agreement and was rebuilding her life elsewhere. I didn't hate her. I didn't forgive her completely either. Some things take time. But I no longer carried anger every day. After the ceremony, Daniel took my hand. Thank you for giving me another chance. I looked at him. Don't waste it. He smiled. I won't. We went home that evening and made dinner together. Nothing dramatic happened. No surprise inheritance. No confrontation. No revenge. Just peace. And somehow, that felt better than everything. Because I finally understood that justice isn't always about watching someone suffer. Sometimes justice is simply getting your life back after someone tried to destroy it. I still remember that Christmas porch. The cold air. The locked door. The sound of music behind me. For a long time, I thought that was the moment my marriage ended. It wasn't. It was the moment I stopped accepting less than I deserved. My husband's family thought they had thrown out a woman who had no power. They were wrong. I had something they didn't have. The truth. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to threaten anyone. I didn't need revenge. I simply stopped protecting the people who had lied about me. Robert revealed the truth. Linda faced the consequences of her actions. Daniel finally learned what loyalty meant. And I learned something too. Never beg someone to defend you when they are more afraid of losing another person's approval than losing you. Love is not supposed to make you disappear. Family is not supposed to require you to tolerate humiliation. And sometimes, walking away from the table is the first step toward finding your voice. Years later, I still keep one thing from that Christmas. It isn't the documents. It isn't the recording. It isn't the photographs. It's the coat I wore that night. The same black coat I wrapped around myself while standing on that porch. Sometimes I see it in the closet and remember how powerless I felt. Then I remember what happened the next morning. Robert arrived with the truth. And from that moment on, everything changed. I didn't get revenge on Linda. I didn't destroy her life. I didn't need to. Her choices created their own consequences. What I did was protect myself. I rebuilt my marriage on different terms. I created boundaries. I stopped measuring my worth by whether someone else approved of me. And I learned that being kind doesn't mean being weak. Being forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. And loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to hurt you without consequences. That Christmas was supposed to break me. Instead, it gave me the courage to become someone I had forgotten how to be. Today, Daniel and I still have our disagreements. We are not perfect. But when something happens, we talk about it. We don't hide things. We don't let our families make decisions for us. And if someone crosses a boundary, we deal with it together. Robert visits us every Sunday. James calls occasionally. The family will never be what it was before. Maybe that's a good thing. Sometimes families need to break apart before they can rebuild themselves honestly. I don't know what happened to Linda after she left. I hope she found a way to understand what she did. I hope she changed. But I no longer need an apology from her. I already have my answer. The truth came out. My name was cleared. My marriage survived. And I walked away from that Christmas night with something far more valuable than revenge. I walked away with my dignity. They threw me out believing I would come crawling back. Instead, I came back only when I wanted to, and this time, I walked through that door as an equal.